When you want ice cream, you should not need a lecture from the freezer aisle. You want something cold, creamy, and worth the spoon. You want a pint that tastes like someone cared about the recipe before they cared about the shelf tag. Welcome to Golden Menu. Today we are counting down 8 ice cream brands that do a better job than most, with real dairy, texture, flavor, and everyday availability in United States stores. I am not ranking these by hype. I am looking at the kind of ice cream older adults actually want to buy and enjoy. That means I care about a short ingredient list, a satisfying texture, a flavor that does not feel fake, and a brand that is easy enough to find when you want it again. No ice cream brand is perfect, and not every flavor in a lineup is equal. Some pints are richer, some are more playful, and some are better for special occasions than for everyday bowls. So think of this as a smart starting point, not a rigid rulebook. If you want a dependable brand, look for one that keeps the base simple and lets the dairy do the work. If you want a fun brand, look for one that still knows how to build a real ice cream first and a flavor story second. That is the balance I am using here. One more thing matters for a lot of older adults. A good pint should not feel like homework. The best ice cream is easy to understand, pleasant to eat slowly, and good enough to feel worth the refrigerator space. If the label and the taste both make sense, that is a strong sign you are on the right track. Before we start the list, tap like so this video reaches more people who want a better scoop, and subscribe to Golden Menu for clear food label breakdowns and smart grocery picks every week. Number 8. Ben & Jerry's. Ben & Jerry's is the dessert first choice on this list. If you want a pint that feels bold, rich, and loaded with mix-ins, this is one of the easiest brands to reach for. The company says its ice cream starts with fresh milk and cream from family farms, and its sourcing story leans heavily on values such as fair trade ingredients and responsible dairy. That matters because the base is still real dairy, not some thin, frozen substitute trying to act like a premium product. What Ben & Jerry's does especially well is texture. Even before you hit the cookie dough, brownie pieces, or swirls, the base usually feels full and creamy. The mix-ins are often the point, but the ice cream underneath is strong enough to hold them. The trade-off is obvious. This is not the lightest pint in the freezer, and it is not the brand I would choose if I wanted a simple bowl every night. It is sweeter, richer, and more indulgent than many other options. That is not a flaw if you want dessert to feel like dessert. For older adults who still want a treat that feels generous and satisfying, Ben & Jerry's is a strong buy when you are in the mood for something bigger than plain vanilla. It is also one of the easiest brands to recommend when you want something that can please a crowd. If you are serving dessert after dinner, Ben & Jerry's gives you a lot of flavor and a lot of personality without feeling generic. Number 7. Tillamook. Tillamook is the practical everyday winner for a lot of shoppers. The brand is a farmer-owned dairy cooperative, and that identity shows up in the product. Tillamook says its ice cream cartons are packed with extra cream, and the texture usually backs that up. It is smooth, rich, and familiar in a way that makes it easy to keep in the house without feeling like a special event every time you open the freezer. That is where Tillamook shines. It gives you a dependable ice cream experience without making you work for it. A good pint is nice. A good pint that you can actually find again next week is better. This is also one of the easiest brands to recommend to someone who wants balance. It does not feel over-designed. It does not lean too hard into novelty. It just tastes like ice cream should taste. If you are the kind of shopper who wants one brand that can live in the freezer and quietly do its job, Tillamook is one of the safest and most useful choices on the whole list. For many households, that is the real advantage. It is rich enough to feel like a treat, but it is familiar enough that you do not have to plan around it. That makes it a very strong everyday pint. Number 6. Van Leeuwen. Van Leeuwen feels like ice cream for people who care about ingredients without wanting to turn the label into homework. The brand built its reputation around the idea of using only good ingredients you can pronounce. That shows up in the flavor lineup and in the overall feel of the product. A classic flavor like vanilla bean is built from milk, cream, cane sugar, egg yolks, vanilla extract, vanilla bean, and salt. That is the kind of ingredient profile that tells you the brand is trying to keep the base honest. The texture is a little more chef-driven than nostalgic. It is dense, clean, and a bit more refined than the average supermarket pint. That makes it a nice pick for people who want something a little more special than the usual grocery store fallback. Van Leeuwen also has a modern feel without losing the basic rules of good ice cream. It can be playful, but it usually does not lose control of the recipe. The base still matters. This is a great choice if you want a premium pint that feels a little more current, a little more urban, and still rooted in real dairy. Van Leeuwen is especially nice if you want a cleaner tasting finish. Some pints leave a heavy aftertaste behind. This one usually feels more precise and polished, which makes it a very appealing choice for a quieter night dessert. Number 5. Graeters. Graeters is one of the most old-school ice cream experiences on this list, and that is exactly why it belongs here. The brand is still family-owned, and it still uses the French pot process to make small batches one at a time. That method creates a very thick, dense spoonful with less air and a slower melt. If you like ice cream that feels substantial and a little luxurious on the tongue, Graeters has a real edge. That dense texture changes the eating experience. It feels less like something whipped into a container and more like something carefully built. You notice it right away. Graeters also gives you the feeling of tradition without pretending to be something it is not. It is not trying to be trendy. It is trying to be good. For some shoppers, that is exactly what makes it memorable. If you grew up liking rich, old-fashioned ice cream, Graeters is one of the clearest examples of how a premium pint can still feel classic and deeply satisfying. This is the kind of brand that reminds people why texture matters. The colder, denser spoonful is not just a gimmick. It changes the whole experience and makes each bite feel more intentional. Number 4. Straus Family Creamery. Straus is the organic answer for shoppers who want a cleaner dairy story. The company says its ice cream begins with premium organic milk and organic cream, and it does not use preservatives, fillers, artificial ingredients, or coloring agents. That is a very straightforward promise, and it is one of the reasons the brand has such a strong reputation among people who read labels carefully. What stands out most is not flash, it is restraint. Straus does not seem interested in distracting you with too many tricks. It wants the milk and cream to carry the flavor, and that usually leads to a smooth, balanced pint that feels honest. For older adults who want an organic option that still tastes like real ice cream instead of a compromise, Straus is a very strong pick. It is not the cheapest option on the shelf, but it gives you a clean ingredient story and a dessert that feels grown up in the best way. If you care about what goes into the pint almost as much as how it tastes, Straus hits a very nice middle ground. It feels thoughtful without trying too hard, which is part of its appeal. Number 3. McConnells. McConnells may be the most disciplined brand on the entire list. The company says its base uses only milk and cream, eggs, and pure cane sugar, and that it does not use stabilizers, fillers, or preservatives. It also says its house-made base reaches 18+% milk fat, which is richer than many artisan ice creams. That alone tells you why the texture feels so full. This is the kind of brand that does a lot by doing less. The recipe is not overloaded, so the dairy can show up clearly. You taste the cream, you taste the sugar, and you taste the flavor, rather than a long list of helper ingredients trying to hide a weak base. McConnell's is a strong choice if you want the shortest path from dairy to spoon. It feels serious, premium, and very focused. There is a confidence to the product that many brands do not have. If you want one of the cleanest, richest ice creams in the freezer, and you do not mind paying for that quality, McConnell's is a top-tier choice. This is the brand I would point to when someone says all premium ice cream tastes the same. McConnell's tends to prove the opposite. The simplicity of the base is exactly what makes the flavor feel so polished. Number 2. Jeni Splendid Ice Creams. Jeni is the creative premium pick. The brand says it builds ice creams completely from scratch, with a unique recipe that has been refined over many years. It also describes the texture as smooth, with a buttercream body and a clean finish. That is not just language for marketing. You can feel it in the pint. Jeni does two things especially well. First, it respects the base. Second, it treats flavor like a real idea, not an afterthought. That is why flavors like Brambleberry Crisp and Salty Caramel have become so popular. They feel designed rather than copied. This is the pint to buy when you want something that feels like a treat with a point of view. It is richer and more thoughtful than a standard grocery store carton, and it often gives you a little more to talk about after the bowl is empty. Jeni is best when you want special occasion ice cream that still tastes like real ice cream, not a frozen dessert pretending to be fancy. It is also one of the best brands for someone who wants a pint to feel memorable. If you are buying for a dinner with guests, or just want something that feels a little more elevated, Jeni has real presence. Number 1. Häagen-Dazs. Häagen-Dazs is the safest all-around recommendation on this list. The brand says its products are made with ingredients you can pronounce, and it avoids artificial flavors, preservatives, and colors in many of its core products. It also says many of its popular flavors are made without genetically modified ingredients. For a brand that is widely available and easy to recognize, that combination matters. What makes Haagen Dazs win the top spot is how consistently it gets the basics right. The flavor is rich. The texture is smooth. The ingredient list is usually easy to understand. It does not try to do too much, and that restraint is part of the appeal. If you want one dependable pint that is easy to find, easy to trust, and easy to come back to, Haagen Dazs is the one I would hand you first. It is not trying to be the flashiest. It is trying to be solid, and it usually is. That is exactly why so many shoppers keep coming back to it. It does not make a big speech. It simply shows up, tastes rich, and gives you a clean default when you do not want to think too hard. For the best everyday choice, start with Haagen Dazs or Tillamook. For the best special occasion pint, go with Jeni or McConnells. If you want the most dessert-heavy option, Ben & Jerry's still has a place. If you want something a little more modern and ingredient-focused, Van Leeuwen and Straus are both excellent. The real lesson is simple. A good ice cream brand should taste like real ice cream, feel satisfying in the spoon, and give you a label that makes sense when you turn the carton around. If two pints are sitting side by side, choose the one that feels honest before it feels clever. The better brand is often the one that does fewer things and does them well. If you are still deciding where to start, begin with Haagen Dazs or Tillamook. Then try Jeni or McConnells when you want something a little more special. That gives you a strong mix of everyday and premium options without overcomplicating the freezer aisle. If this helped you shop smarter, like the video, subscribe to Golden Menu, and comment with the ice cream brand you want us to check next.